The Galactic Military Exchange Station orbited the neutral world of Kepler 442b, a massive structure that housed representatives from every spacefaring species in the known galaxy. Built after the Treaty of Seven Suns, it served as both a diplomatic center and a training ground where different species could learn from each other's military traditions. Among the many memorials and monuments scattered throughout the station's central district stood one that drew curious visitors from across the galaxy. The tomb of the unknown human sat in a small, perfectly maintained garden area, surrounded by earth flora that somehow thrived under the artificial atmosphere. The simple black stone monument bore no elaborate decorations, only clean lines and the inscription, "Here lies a human soldier known but to God and their comrades." What made this memorial unique wasn't its modest appearance, but the guard who stood watch over it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without fail. The tomb guard, as they were known throughout the station, maintained a vigil that had never been broken since the monument's dedication 15 years ago. Today's guard was Senior Specialist Maria Santos, a compact woman whose every movement spoke of years of precise training. She wore the traditional ceremonial uniform, deep blue with silver trim perfectly pressed and maintained. Her rifle, an antique projectile weapon from Earth's military museums, was polished to mirror brightness. Every 21 steps she would execute a perfect about-face, pause for 21 seconds, then continue her measured patrol. The precision was mesmerizing. Her footfalls created a rhythmic pattern that had become as much a part of the station's ambient sound as the hum of life support systems. Alien visitors often gathered at the respectful distance marked by subtle barriers, watching in fascination as Santos performed her duty with mechanical perfection. Commander Zethik of the Altarian Navy had been observing for nearly an hour, his 4 eyes tracking every movement. "Remarkable," he whispered to his aide through their translator device. "Such dedication to ceremony. Do you think it serves any practical military purpose?" Before the aide could respond, the quiet atmosphere was disturbed by heavy footsteps approaching from the main corridor. A group of Russian Marines in their distinctive combat fatigues rounded the corner, their conversation loud and boisterous. At their head walked Senior Lieutenant Boris Volkov, a mountain of a man whose chest displayed an impressive array of campaign ribbons and decorations. Volkov had earned his reputation in the Titan mining wars and the Jupiter system conflicts. His unit had distinguished themselves in boarding actions against pirate vessels, and his personal combat record was impressive by any standard. He carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room. As the group approached the memorial area, their conversation gradually died down. Even they could sense the solemnity of the space, but Volkov's expression showed something between curiosity and dismissiveness as he observed Santos continuing her patrol. "Look at this," he said to his companions in accented English, apparently forgetting that his voice carried clearly in the quiet space. "Playing dress-up with an old rifle. This is what happens when you have too much peacetime." Santos gave no indication that she had heard him. Her pace remained constant, her expression unchanged behind the dark glasses that were part of her ceremonial uniform. 21 steps, about face, 21-second pause. Continue. Several alien observers shifted uncomfortably. They had learned enough about human customs to recognize that Volkov's comments were inappropriate, but they weren't sure what, if anything, would happen next. Volkov studied Santos for several more minutes, noting her youth and relatively low-rank insignia. In his military experience, ceremony was fine for special occasions, but real soldiers dealt with real threats. This looked like makework for someone who hadn't seen actual combat. "Excuse me, Specialist," he called out, using Santos's rank with the casual authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am Senior Lieutenant Volkov, Russian Space Marines. I need to speak with whoever is in charge of security for this sector." Santos continued her patrol as if no one had spoken. 21 steps, about face, 21-second pause, continue. Volkov's eyebrows rose. He was accustomed to immediate responses to his requests, particularly from junior personnel. "Specialist Santos," he said, reading her name tape. "I am addressing you directly. Military courtesy requires that you acknowledge a superior officer." Still no response. Santos's pace never varied. Her breathing remained steady and her grip on the ceremonial rifle never shifted. To outside observers, she might as well have been a very sophisticated automaton. The Russian officer's face began to redden slightly. His companions exchanged glances, recognizing the warning signs. Volkov had a reputation for being demanding, but he was also known for his adherence to military protocol. Being ignored by a junior enlisted person was not something he would tolerate gracefully. "This is unacceptable," he muttered to his men, then raised his voice again. "Specialist, you will respond when addressed by a superior officer. This is not a request." The alien observers were now paying full attention. Commander Zethick had summoned his aide and was quietly recording the interaction. In his experience, humans were usually quite concerned with their military hierarchies. This situation seemed to violate everything he understood about their command structure. Santos completed another circuit of her patrol route. Her movements remained perfectly timed, perfectly controlled. But those who looked closely might have noticed the slightest tightening around her eyes, the only indication that she was aware of the growing tension. Volkov stepped closer to the barrier line, his patience clearly wearing thin. "I am going to ask one more time, Specialist. What are your orders regarding this post, and who is your commanding officer?" The silence stretched on, broken only by the measured sound of Santos's footsteps and the quiet hum of the station's systems. Other visitors to the memorial area were beginning to gather, drawn by the unusual confrontation. Word was spreading through the station's communication networks that something interesting was happening at the human tomb. Among the growing crowd of observers were representatives from species who had fought alongside humans in various conflicts. They knew that human military discipline was legendary throughout the galaxy, but they had never seen it tested quite like this. The stage was set for what would become one of the most memorable demonstrations of military protocol in the station's history. Senior Lieutenant Volkov's patience had reached its breaking point. In his 15 years of military service, from the rough boarding actions in the outer colonies to peacekeeping missions in the asteroid belt, he had never encountered a subordinate who simply refused to acknowledge his presence. The very concept seemed impossible within any functional military structure. "This is ridiculous," he declared to his men, loud enough for the growing crowd of observers to hear clearly. "We have a breakdown in basic military discipline here." Santos continued her measured patrol. 21 steps toward the eastern edge of her route. About face executed with mechanical precision. 21 seconds of absolute stillness, rifle held at the perfect angle. Then the return journey began. Sergeant Petrov, one of Volkov's most trusted NCOs, stepped closer to his commander. "Sir, perhaps we should contact station security. This might be a medical issue." Volkov shook his head sharply. "This is not medical, Sergeant. This is insubordination, pure and simple." He studied Santos more carefully, noting the perfect maintenance of her uniform, the precise timing of her movements, the unwavering focus in her visible posture. "Look at her. She's clearly capable of following orders. She's simply choosing not to follow mine." Among the observers, Commander Zethick found himself growing more intrigued by the moment. His aide had been discreetly recording the entire interaction, and preliminary analysis showed that Santos's vital signs, as detected by the station's medical scanners, remained absolutely steady. No elevation in heart rate, no signs of stress or distress. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't a case of a soldier frozen by fear or confusion. "Most interesting," Zethick murmured. In Altarian military tradition, ignoring a superior officer would result in immediate disciplinary action, yet she appears completely calm. A new voice joined the conversation as Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Defense Forces approached the gathering crowd. She had been conducting routine meetings with Station Command when word reached her about the situation developing at the human tomb. As the senior Earth military representative on the station, protocol demanded her presence. "Is there a problem here, Lieutenant Volkov?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. Mitchell was well aware of Volkov's reputation and his unit's distinguished service record. She was also intimately familiar with the protocols surrounding the tomb guard. Volkov turned to face her, relief evident in his expression. Finally, someone with appropriate rank who could address this situation. "Captain Mitchell, yes. I've been attempting to speak with Specialist Santos for several minutes. She has completely ignored direct orders from a superior officer. This kind of breakdown in discipline reflects poorly on all human military forces. Mitchell nodded slowly, glancing at Santos, who continued her patrol without any indication that she was aware of the conversation taking place mere meters away. I see. And what did you need to discuss with Specialist Santos? I required information about security protocols for this sector, Volkov replied. When I attempted to address her directly, she showed complete disrespect for rank structure. This is unacceptable behavior that needs immediate correction. Captain Mitchell walked closer to the memorial area, stopping just outside the marked boundary. She watched Santos complete another circuit of her route, noting the perfect timing, the unwavering attention to detail, the absolute focus on her assigned task. Lieutenant Volkov, Mitchell said finally, are you familiar with the specific protocols governing the Tomb Guard? I am familiar with military protocol in general, Captain, Volkov replied, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice. A specialist responds when addressed by senior officers. This is basic military courtesy observed by every professional force in the galaxy. Mitchell turned to face the assembled crowd, which now included representatives from at least a dozen different species. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, she began. It appears we have an educational opportunity here. The situation you're observing is not a breakdown in military discipline. It is, in fact, military discipline functioning exactly as designed. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several alien observers activated recording devices, sensing that they were about to witness something significant. Specialist Santos, Mitchell continued, is currently serving as a tomb guard. This is one of the most prestigious and demanding assignments in all of human military service. The requirements for selection are more stringent than those for our most elite special operations units. Volkov's expression showed growing skepticism. Captain, with respect, this appears to be ceremonial duty. Important for morale and tradition, certainly, but hardly equivalent to combat operations. Is that so? Mitchell smiled slightly. Tell me, Lieutenant, how long have you been observing Specialist Santos? Approximately 10 minutes, Volkov replied. And in that time, how many steps has she taken? Volkov looked confused. I wasn't counting steps, Captain. 210, said Commander Zethick suddenly, all four of his eyes focused on Mitchell. 21 steps each direction, 10 complete circuits. The timing has been precise to within 0.03 seconds throughout the entire observation period. Mitchell nodded approvingly. Excellent observation, Commander. Now, Lieutenant Volkov, can you tell me what Specialist Santos has been doing during the pauses in her patrol? Standing still, Volkov answered, clearly puzzled by the direction of the questioning. Incorrect, Mitchell replied crisply. During each 21-second pause, Specialist Santos has been conducting a complete threat assessment of the surrounding area. She has cataloged every individual who has entered or left this space, identified all potential security concerns, and maintained constant awareness of tactical considerations that would be relevant to her primary mission. The crowd had grown larger, and absolute silence fell over the memorial area except for the measured sound of Santos's footfalls. Furthermore, Mitchell continued, Specialist Santos has been following her standing orders precisely. Those orders, established as part of the sacred protocol governing this post, explicitly state that the Tomb Guard will not speak, will not break character, and will not acknowledge any distraction while on duty. Not for senior officers, not for emergencies, not for any reason whatsoever. Volkov's face reddened again, but this time with embarrassment rather than anger. Captain, surely there must be exceptions for legitimate military requirements. No exceptions, Mitchell said firmly. When the President of Earth visited this station 2 years ago, the Tomb Guard on duty did not acknowledge her presence. When a fire alarm malfunctioned and required evacuation of this sector, the Tomb Guard continued his duty until physically relieved by his replacement. Even as station security teams worked around him, the implications of Mitchell's words began to sink in among the observers. This wasn't a case of a junior soldier ignoring authority. This was a demonstration of military discipline so absolute that it transcended normal command structures. Lieutenant Volkov processed Captain Mitchell's explanation with the analytical mind that had served him well in combat situations. However, his military training and personal experience created a fundamental conflict with what he was being told. "Captain Mitchell," he said carefully, "I respect the traditions you describe, but military protocol exists for practical reasons. In an actual emergency, this inflexibility could prove dangerous. What if enemy forces attacked this station? What if there was a real security threat that required immediate coordination?" Mitchell's expression remained neutral, but several alien observers noted what appeared to be the slightest smile at the corner of her mouth. "An excellent question, Lieutenant. Perhaps we should test your theory." Before Volkov could respond, Mitchell activated her personal communicator. "Station security, this is Captain Mitchell. I need you to send a team to the human memorial area. We have a situation that requires demonstration of emergency protocols." The response was immediate. "Roger, Captain." Security team dispatched. "ETA 3 minutes." As they waited, Volkov studied Santos more intently. Her patrol continued with the same mechanical precision. But now he was looking for signs of awareness, indicators that she was monitoring the situation around her. What he saw challenged his assumptions about ceremonial duty. Santos's head never turned, but her eyes moved constantly within their fixed forward gaze. During each 21-second pause, her peripheral vision swept the entire area systematically. When a maintenance worker passed through a distant corridor, her posture shifted almost imperceptibly, indicating awareness of the new presence. When Commander Zethik's aide moved to get a better camera angle, Santos's grip on her rifle adjusted by millimeters. "She's tracking everything," Volkov realized aloud. "This isn't ceremony. This is active surveillance." "Now you begin to understand," Mitchell replied. "The tomb guard isn't just honoring the dead, Lieutenant. She's maintaining security through the most rigorous discipline any military force has ever developed." The station security team arrived precisely on schedule. 4 officers in full tactical gear, moving with the quick efficiency of professionals responding to a potential threat. Their leader, a veteran sergeant whose species was unfamiliar to most of the observers, approached Mitchell directly. "Captain, what's the nature of the emergency?" Mitchell gestured toward the memorial area. "Sergeant, we have reports of suspicious activity near the human tomb. I need you and your team to conduct a full security sweep of this area, including close inspection of the memorial itself." The security sergeant nodded and deployed his team immediately. They moved into the memorial space with practiced efficiency, conducting what was clearly a genuine security sweep. Scanners emerged, checking for explosive devices, surveillance equipment, and any other potential threats. Santos continued her patrol. As the security team worked around her, the tomb guard maintained her exact routine. When a security officer moved directly into her path, she executed a precise sidestep without breaking pace, adjusted her route by exactly the necessary distance, then returned to her standard pattern once the obstacle was clear. Her timing remained perfect throughout. "Remarkable," breathed Commander Zethik. "She adapts to maintain her duty without compromising either mission." But Lieutenant Volkov wasn't finished testing the system. His combat experience had taught him that every protocol had breaking points, and he intended to find them. Stepping forward to the very edge of the marked boundary, he raised his voice to full command volume. "Specialist Santos, I am Senior Lieutenant Boris Volkov, Russian Space Marines. I am ordering you to halt your patrol and report to me immediately for debriefing on a security matter of the highest priority." The words echoed through the memorial space with unmistakable authority. This wasn't a request or a casual inquiry. This was a direct order delivered in the tone every military person in the galaxy would, recognize as demanding immediate compliance. Santos's response was to continue her patrol exactly as before. That their effect on the crowd was electric. Alien observers who had been quietly recording suddenly became more animated, exchanging rapid communications about what they were witnessing. Several human personnel from other services had joined the crowd, and their expressions ranged from pride to amazement. Volkov tried again, this time using formal Russian military protocols. "По моему приказу, stop." He barked in Russian, then switched back to English. "By my direct order, halt. Specialist Santos, you are in violation of direct orders from a superior officer. 21 steps, about face, 21 seconds of perfect stillness, continue." "This is impossible," Volkov muttered, but his tone had shifted from anger to fascination. In Russian military doctrine, failing to obey a direct order is one of the most serious offenses possible. The discipline required to maintain this behavior under direct confrontation. Captain Mitchell stepped closer to the memorial boundary. Lieutenant, you've just witnessed something that most beings in this galaxy will never see. You've observed human military discipline in its purest form. Specialist Santos just demonstrated that her commitment to her assigned mission is stronger than her response to authority, stronger than her personal comfort, stronger than any external pressure. The security team completed their sweep and reported to Mitchell. Area secure, Captain. No threats detected. Standard patrol patterns can resume. Thank you, Sergeant. Return to normal duties. As the security team departed, the full magnitude of what had just occurred began to sink in among the observers. During an active security sweep with multiple armed personnel moving through her area, while being directly challenged by a senior officer, Santos had never broken protocol, even once. Volkov shook his head slowly. Captain, I must ask, what happens if someone actually tries to interfere with the memorial? What if there's a real threat? Why don't you find out? Mitchell suggested. Step across that boundary line. Volkov looked at the subtle marking that designated the memorial's protected space, then back at Santos, who was approaching the eastern end of her patrol route. You want me to enter the restricted area? I want you to understand what you're really looking at, Mitchell replied. Cross that line, Lieutenant. The crowd held its breath as Volkov slowly extended 1 foot across the boundary. Santos was in the middle of her 21-second pause, standing at perfect attention, rifle held at the prescribed angle. The moment Volkov's foot touched the protected ground, Santos moved. The transformation was instantaneous and startling. Without breaking her formal posture or changing her expression, Santos smoothly transitioned from ceremonial stance to a combat-ready position. Her antique rifle, which seconds before had been a symbolic prop, was now held in a way that made it clear she knew exactly how to use it effectively. Sir, Santos spoke for the first time, her voice clear and professional. You are in a restricted area. Please step back immediately. Volkov quickly withdrew his foot, his soldier's instincts recognizing the subtle but unmistakable shift in Santos's demeanor. She had gone from ceremonial guard to active protector in the space of a heartbeat. The moment he stepped back across the boundary, Santos resumed her patrol as if nothing had happened. The transition was so smooth it seemed almost magical. The demonstration had attracted attention far beyond the immediate area. Throughout the Galactic Military Exchange Station, word spread through communication networks in dozens of languages about the extraordinary. Seen unfolding at the human tomb, representatives from the most powerful military forces in known space began converging. On the memorial area, General Krexter of the Thanarian Empire arrived with his full honor guard, their distinctive crimson armor marking them as veterans of the Core Worlds campaign. The Thanarians had fought alongside human forces in 3 major conflicts, and their respect for human military capability was well established. But even Krextar's battle-hardened expression showed surprise as he observed Santos's unwavering discipline. In our military tradition, he explained to his aide in their clicking language, such dedication is reserved for the protection of the Emperor himself. Yet this human maintains this standard for the memory of an unknown soldier. Admiral Vorthak of the Crystalline Collective had positioned herself where her multiple sensory organs could analyze Santos from every angle. Her species experienced reality through vibrations and energy patterns invisible to most other beings, and what she detected defied her understanding of biological limitations. Impossible, she hummed to her companions. This being's stress indicators should be elevated significantly. Confrontation with authority figures triggers biochemical responses in all known species. Yet her patterns remain perfectly stable. Colonel Rifton of the Void Runners, elite warriors who prided themselves on their ability to function in the harshest environments, studied Santos with professional interest. His people were known for their mental discipline and physical endurance, but what he was observing challenged even their capabilities. My soldiers can maintain position under fire for hours, he transmitted through his mechanical communication device. But this level of psychological isolation while remaining alert and responsive, this requires training beyond anything in our doctrine. Lieutenant Volkov found himself in the unusual position of being surrounded by the galaxy's most experienced military leaders, all of whom were asking him questions about what they had just witnessed. Tell me, Lieutenant, General Krextar inquired through his translator. How long do these guards maintain their posts? I'm not entirely certain, Volkov admitted, looking to Captain Mitchell for clarification. Standard shifts are 8 hours, Mitchell replied. During extreme weather or special circumstances, guards have maintained their posts for extended periods. The record is currently held by Sergeant Williams, who stood watch for 18 consecutive hours during a solar storm that prevented normal shift changes. 18 hours, Admiral Vorthak repeated, her crystalline form shifting colors as she processed the information, without breaks, without conversation, without any external stimulation beyond the routine of their duty. Without acknowledgement of rank, authority, or external pressure, added Colonel Rifton. This represents a level of mental conditioning that approaches the theoretical limits of biological possibility. Commander Zethik, who had been recording and analyzing the entire interaction, approached Mitchell directly. Captain, if I may ask, what is the selection process for these guards? In Altarian military science, we have extensive research on psychological conditioning and stress response. What you've shown us suggests training methods that exceed our current understanding. Mitchell considered her response carefully. The tomb guard selection and training process was not classified information, but it was also not widely known outside human military circles. The selection process begins with volunteers from all branches of human military service, she explained. Physical requirements include perfect health, excellent vision, and the ability to maintain precise movements for extended periods. Height and appearance standards ensure uniformity of presentation. But the psychological requirements, Krextar interjected, surely that is where the true selection occurs. Psychological evaluation is extensive, Mitchell confirmed. Candidates undergo months of testing to determine their ability to maintain focus under stress, their commitment to duty, and their capacity for the mental discipline required. The failure rate exceeds 90%. Colonel Rifton's mechanical voice carried a note of respect. Such standards would eliminate most of our finest warriors. What is the training period for successful candidates? Minimum of 1 year, Mitchell replied. They learn the complete history of every human military conflict, memorize the names and service records of thousands of honored dead, and master the precise movements required for the ceremony. But most importantly, they develop the mental state necessary to maintain absolute focus while remaining aware of their surroundings. Santos continued her patrol throughout this discussion, her presence serving as a living demonstration of everything Mitchell described. The alien military leaders watched her with growing appreciation for the complexity of what they were witnessing. I begin to understand, Admiral Vorthak said slowly. This is not merely ceremony. This is a demonstration of the ultimate military virtue, absolute reliability. In our empire, General Krextar added, we have sayings about warriors who can be counted upon in any circumstance. Soldiers who will hold their positions regardless of cost, who will follow orders regardless of personal danger. But to see such dedication in practice, Lieutenant Volkov had been listening to these exchanges with growing realization of his own misunderstanding. I approached this as a question of military hierarchy, he said to Mitchell. I thought I was dealing with a breakdown in command structure. But this isn't about rank at all, is it? No, Lieutenant, it isn't, Mitchell replied. Specialist Santos isn't ignoring your authority because she disrespects it. She's maintaining her discipline because her commitment to this duty transcends normal military relationships. When she accepted this assignment, she took an oath that placed this responsibility above everything else in her military life. Commander Zethik had been conducting continuous scans throughout the conversation, and his findings were remarkable. Captain Mitchell, our sensors indicate that Specialist Santos has been tracking every individual who has entered this area, cataloging potential threat levels and maintaining constant awareness of tactical considerations, all while appearing to focus solely on her ceremonial duties. The human military concept of situational awareness taken to its logical extreme, Colonel Rifton observed. She is simultaneously performing ceremony and conducting security operations at the maximum level of both functions. Which brings up an interesting question, Admiral Vorthak interjected. We have seen her response to boundary violations. What would happen in case of an actual attack on this position? Captain Mitchell's expression grew serious. The Tomb Guard is trained in combat operations as well as ceremonial duties. The rifle may be an antique, but it's fully functional. Specialist Santos is qualified on advanced weapon systems and hand-to-hand combat. If this memorial were threatened, the attacker would discover that they were facing not just a ceremonial guard, but a warrior trained to the highest human military standards. This revelation sent ripples of communication through the assembled alien representatives. The concept of combining ceremonial duty with active combat readiness was unknown in most of their military traditions. So the ultimate question, Lieutenant Volkov said thoughtfully, is not whether she would break protocol to follow orders. The question is whether any situation could arise that would be more important than her assigned duty. Santos completed another circuit of her patrol, her movements as precise as they had been an hour earlier, seemingly unaffected by the intense scrutiny and discussion surrounding her. The assembled military leaders from across the galaxy had their answer. Captain Mitchell surveyed the assembled representatives from across the galaxy's most formidable military forces. What had begun as a simple misunderstanding between human personnel had evolved into something far more significant, an opportunity to demonstrate the principles that made human military doctrine unique among spacefaring civilizations. Since we have such distinguished observers, Mitchell announced, perhaps this would be an appropriate time for a complete demonstration of Tomb Guard protocols. Lieutenant Volkov's questions about military hierarchy and emergency procedures deserve comprehensive answers. She activated her personal communicator again. Station Command, this is Captain Mitchell at the Human Memorial. I'm requesting permission to conduct a full ceremonial demonstration for visiting military representatives. Permission granted, Captain, came the immediate response. All necessary resources are at your disposal. Mitchell turned to face the crowd, which now numbered nearly 50 beings from 24 different species. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, you are about to witness protocols that represent the culmination of human military tradition. What you've seen so far is merely the standard duty performance. The true masterclass is about to begin. General Krextar leaned forward with interest. Are you suggesting that Specialist Santos's current performance is not the maximum demonstration of your ceremonial discipline? What you've observed is a tomb guard performing normal duties, Mitchell replied. Now you'll see what happens when the protocols are fully activated. Without warning, Mitchell stepped into the memorial area, crossing the boundary that had triggered Santos's defensive response earlier. But instead of the challenge that had met Volkov, Santos smoothly altered her patrol pattern to accommodate Mitchell's presence, seamlessly integrating the captain's position into her tactical awareness, without breaking her ceremonial rhythm. Protocol 1, Mitchell announced clearly. Inspection by Superior Officer. Santos immediately transitioned into inspection position, rifle held at present arms, posture perfect, eyes fixed straight ahead. Mitchell began a formal military inspection, examining every detail of Santos's uniform, equipment, and bearing with meticulous attention. Notice, Mitchell called to the observers, that during inspection the guard maintains complete situational awareness. Specialist Santos, report the current number of observers in the memorial area. 47 beings currently present, ma'am, Santos replied without moving her eyes or shifting her position. 12 additional approaching from the eastern corridor. 2 maintenance personnel working in adjacent areas. Station security patrol passing through Sector 7. The precision of her awareness stunned the alien observers. Admiral Vorthak's crystalline form shifted rapidly through several color spectrums as she processed the implications. She has been conducting continuous tactical assessment throughout the entire demonstration. Every tomb guard is trained to maintain complete environmental awareness while performing ceremonial duties, Mitchell confirmed. Specialist Santos can tell you the identity, approximate rank, and potential threat level of every individual in this area. Colonel Riftion's mechanical voice carried a note of disbelief. While appearing to focus solely on her ceremonial function, this represents a level of multitasking beyond our current understanding of biological limitations. Protocol 2, Mitchell announced. Change of command demonstration. She moved to a specific position near the memorial and assumed a formal stance. Santos immediately recognized the signal and began the intricate ceremony of changing guard duty. Her movements became even more precise, if such a thing were possible, as she performed the ritual that would transfer responsibility for the memorial to another guard, except no replacement guard appeared. Santos continued the ceremony anyway, performing both parts of the elaborate ritual. She moved through positions that would normally accommodate a second person, timing her movements to account for responses that weren't there, maintaining the perfect choreography of a ceremony designed for 2 participants. Impossible, breathed Commander Zethic. She's performing a duet as a solo piece, maintaining the timing and precision required for both participants. The ceremony must be performed correctly regardless of circumstances, Mitchell explained. If a replacement guard fails to appear, the outgoing guard continues duty. If replacement arrives late, the ceremony adjusts seamlessly. The ritual itself is considered sacred and cannot be abbreviated or modified. Protocol 3, Mitchell called out. Weather emergency simulation. She activated controls on her wrist device, and suddenly the memorial area was subjected to artificial environmental stress. Temperature dropped dramatically. Wind generators created strong gusts from multiple directions, and atmospheric pressure fluctuated rapidly. Santos adjusted her stance to compensate for the wind, her grip on the rifle shifting slightly to maintain proper position, but her patrol continued without interruption. Ice began forming on her uniform from the temperature change, but her movements remained perfectly timed. How long can she maintain position under these conditions? General Krexter inquired, his honor guard showing obvious concern for Santos's well-being. The record for duty under adverse conditions is currently 18 hours and 43 minutes, Mitchell replied. That was during an actual solar storm that knocked out life support in this sector. The guard maintained his post while wearing emergency atmospheric gear. Lieutenant Volkov watched in growing amazement as Santos continued her patrol despite conditions that would challenge even experienced combat veterans. This isn't just discipline, he realized aloud. This is a demonstration of human endurance capabilities. Protocol 4, Mitchell announced, raising her voice over the artificial wind. Threat response drill. She gestured to station security, and immediately armed personnel took positions around the memorial area. They didn't threaten Santos directly, but their presence created an obviously tense tactical situation. Santos's response was subtle but unmistakable to the trained military observers. Her patrol route adjusted slightly to provide better coverage of potential approaches. Her grip on the rifle shifted to allow for quicker deployment if necessary. Her head position changed by degrees, maximizing her field of view without breaking ceremonial protocol. She's analyzing fields of fire, Colonel Rifton observed with professional admiration, calculating tactical options while maintaining ceremonial posture. This represents integration of combat awareness with formal duty that we have never achieved in our forces. Admiral Vorthak had been conducting continuous sensor analysis throughout the demonstration. Captain Mitchell, our readings indicate that Specialist Santos's stress responses remain within normal parameters despite the environmental challenges and tactical pressure. How is this possible? Training, Mitchell replied simply. But more than that, absolute conviction in the importance of the mission. Tomb guards don't maintain their posts because they're forced to. They do it because they believe, completely and without reservation, that this duty is worth any sacrifice required. The environmental stressors were shut down, and the security personnel withdrew. Santos immediately returned to her standard patrol pattern, showing no sign that the previous minutes of extreme conditions had affected her in any way. Protocol 5, Mitchell announced, the ultimate test. She moved to a communication panel and activated it publicly so all observers could hear. Station Command, this is Captain Mitchell. I need to speak with Specialist Santos's family on Earth. Emergency communication protocols. A few moments later, a voice came through the speakers. Maria. Maria, is that you? This is your mother. Are you all right, honey? For the first time since the demonstration began, Santos's perfect composure showed the slightest crack. Her step hesitated for perhaps a tenth of a second, and her breathing pattern changed almost imperceptibly. But she continued her patrol. Maria, please answer me. Her mother's voice continued now with obvious worry. They said there was an emergency. Are you hurt? The assembled military leaders watched in absolute silence as Santos maintained her duty, while her mother's increasingly desperate voice filled the memorial area. This was no longer a test of military discipline. This was a demonstration of sacrifice that transcended normal human emotional responses. The memorial area had fallen into absolute silence except for the measured sound of Santos's footsteps and the voice of her increasingly distressed mother echoing through the communication system. Every being present, from the most battle-hardened veterans to the sophisticated alien analysts, watched with a mixture of awe and growing discomfort as the emotional torture continued. "Maria, please just say something," her mother pleaded. "The officials said there was an incident at your station. I've been worried sick. Are you safe?" Santos's face remained expressionless behind her ceremonial glasses, but those closest to her could see the slight tremor in her jaw, the almost invisible tightening around her eyes. Her patrol continued with mechanical precision, but the cost of maintaining protocol was becoming visible. Lieutenant Volkov stepped toward Captain Mitchell, his voice low but urgent. "Captain, this has gone far enough. You're torturing that soldier." Mitchell held up a hand for silence, her attention focused completely on Santos. "Watch," she said quietly. "Watch what happens next." Santos completed her 21 steps to the eastern boundary and executed her about-face. As she paused for the regulation 21 seconds, her mother's voice continued to pour through the speakers, now joined by what sounded like Santos's father and younger sister, all expressing worry and begging for some response. "Maria, if you can hear this, we love you," her father's voice added. "Whatever's happening up there, just remember that we're proud of you. Come home safe to us." For a moment that lasted an eternity, Santos stood frozen at perfect attention. Her breathing had become slightly irregular, and a single tear traced down her cheek beneath the dark glasses. The assembled military leaders watched what appeared to be the breaking point of human endurance. Then Santos took her next step, 21 measured paces toward the western boundary. Perfect timing, flawless execution. The tear dried on her cheek, but her duty continued. General Krekstar's voice carried a note of something approaching reverence. "In all my years of military service across dozens of worlds and countless battles, I have never seen anything like this. She is choosing duty over the most fundamental biological imperative, response to family in distress." Admiral Vorthak's crystalline form had shifted to deep blue, indicating profound emotional response among her species. "Our sensors detect significant stress markers, elevated adrenaline and emotional distress patterns consistent with acute psychological pressure. Yet her performance remains flawless. This exceeds theoretical limits for biological beings." Captain Mitchell activated her communicator. "Station command, terminate the emergency communication. This is a drill conclusion." The speakers went silent, cutting off the voices of Santos's family mid-sentence. Santos showed no visible reaction to the sudden silence, continuing her patrol as if nothing had changed. "That," Mitchell announced to the assembled crowd, "was not a real emergency communication. It was a recording made during Santos's training period, with her family's full knowledge and cooperation. It is the final test that every tomb guard must pass before being certified for duty." The revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd of observers. Several alien representatives began rapid communication among themselves, processing the implications of what they had witnessed. "You're telling us," Colonel Rifton said, his mechanical voice carrying disbelief, "that your military deliberately subjects its personnel to psychological torture as part of training?" "We subject them to the hardest test they will ever face," Mitchell corrected, "because when they stand guard over the honored dead, they must be prepared for anything. Natural disasters, enemy attacks, personal emergencies, family crises, medical emergencies of their own. Nothing can be allowed to break their vigil." Lieutenant Volkov shook his head slowly. The level of mental conditioning required to pass such a test. "In Russian military doctrine, we pride ourselves on producing tough soldiers. But this goes beyond toughness. This is a complete redefinition of military dedication." "Now you understand," Mitchell replied, "why Specialist Santos did not respond to your authority, Lieutenant. Not because she doesn't respect rank, but because she has been trained to a standard where personal considerations, including response to authority figures, cannot be allowed to interfere with her mission." Commander Zethik had been recording and analyzing the entire demonstration. "Captain Mitchell, I must ask, what is the psychological cost of this training? Surely such conditioning must have effects on the individuals who undergo it." Mitchell's expression grew serious. "The psychological evaluation and support systems for tomb guards are extensive. Not every soldier who volunteers can complete the training, and not every soldier who completes training can serve effectively long-term. The average tour of duty is 2 years, after which guards are transitioned to other assignments with full psychological support. And those who serve, Admiral Vorthak inquired. They become some of the most respected members of our military, Mitchell replied. Former tomb guards are sought after for special operations, diplomatic security, and command positions. The discipline and mental strength developed during this service translates into exceptional performance in all other military roles. Santos continued her patrol, seemingly unaffected by the discussion of her training and service. But observant beings might have noticed that her posture had somehow become even more perfect, her movements even more precise, as if the demonstration had reminded her of the significance of her role. There is one final protocol, Mitchell announced, checking her chronometer, that you should observe before this demonstration concludes. She moved to a position near the memorial stone and assumed a formal stance. Protocol 6, the changing of the guard. From the main corridor, a new figure approached, another soldier in identical ceremonial uniform, moving with the same measured precision that had characterized Santos's performance. This was Santos's relief, arriving for the next shift. What followed was a ceremony of breathtaking complexity and beauty. The two guards moved through an intricate dance of military precision, transferring responsibility for the memorial through movements that had been refined over decades of tradition. Every step was choreographed, every gesture carried meaning, and every second was accounted for in a ritual that honored both the guards and the memory they protected. The ceremony concluded with Santos stepping out of the memorial area for the first time in 8 hours. While her replacement assumed the duty with identical dedication, Santos moved to a position of attention and, for the first time since Lieutenant Volkov had begun his challenge, spoke in a normal conversational tone. Captain Mitchell, Specialist Santos reporting completion of guard duty. The memorial is secure and all protocols have been maintained. Mitchell returned her salute formally. Thank you, Specialist Santos. Duty well performed. As Santos departed for her post-duty responsibilities, Lieutenant Volkov approached Mitchell with a new understanding of what he had witnessed. Captain, he said quietly, I came here today thinking I understood military discipline. I believed that my combat experience and service record gave me insight into what soldiers are capable of achieving. I was wrong. The assembled military leaders from across the galaxy nodded in agreement, each processing what they had learned about human military capabilities and the standards to which human soldiers could be trained. In the days following the demonstration at the Human Memorial, the footage recorded by dozens of alien observers spread throughout the galactic communication networks. Military academies across known space requested copies for analysis and training purposes. The incident, which had begun as a simple misunderstanding about military protocol, had evolved into something that fundamentally changed how other species viewed human military capability. Lieutenant Volkov found himself in the unexpected position of being interviewed by military analysts from a dozen different civilizations. His perspective as the catalyst for the demonstration made him a valuable source of insight into human military doctrine. The most remarkable aspect, he explained to a panel of Altarian military researchers, was the realization that what I had interpreted as inflexibility was actually the ultimate expression of reliability. Specialist Santos didn't ignore my authority because she was poorly trained. She maintained her protocol because she was trained beyond anything I had previously imagined possible. The interview was being conducted in the same memorial area where the demonstration had occurred. The new guard on duty, Corporal Chen, maintained his patrol with the same unwavering precision that had characterized Santos's performance, serving as a living reminder of the standards being discussed. In Russian military tradition, Volkov continued, we value soldiers who can adapt to changing circumstances, who can make decisions under pressure, who can modify their approach based on new information. What I learned is that sometimes the highest form of military virtue is the ability to never change, to be so completely reliable that others can build their strategies around your absolute consistency. General Krekstar had returned to the memorial several times since the demonstration, often bringing visiting officers from the Thanarian Empire to observe the Tomb Guard protocols firsthand. The experience had led to significant discussions within Thanarian military leadership about incorporating similar discipline. Training into their own forces, we have warriors who will fight to the death, he explained to his senior staff during one such visit. We have soldiers who will follow orders into impossible situations. But we do not have personnel who can maintain this level of psychological control while remaining tactically aware and combat-ready. The humans have achieved something we did not know was possible. Admiral Vorthik had submitted a comprehensive report to the Crystalline Collective's Military Council, recommending immediate revision of their assumptions about biological military capabilities. Her analysis of the demonstration had revealed efficiency patterns that challenged their understanding of how conscious beings could function under stress. The implications extend beyond military applications, she reported to the Council. If humans can train their personnel to maintain this level of focus and reliability, we must reconsider our assessments of their potential in diplomatic, scientific, and commercial endeavors. The discipline demonstrated suggests capabilities that could affect all forms of interspecies cooperation. Colonel Rifton had perhaps been the most affected by the demonstration. The Void Runners prided themselves on mental discipline and the ability to function in extreme environments. But the Tomb Guard protocols had shown them new possibilities for training and conditioning. We train our warriors to endure physical hardship and overcome environmental challenges, he reported to his command structure. The humans have developed methods for conditioning psychological endurance that exceed our current capabilities. I recommend immediate initiation of cultural exchange programs to study their training methodologies. Captain Mitchell found herself appointed as liaison for the numerous requests for information about human military training that followed the demonstration. The interest was so significant that Earth's military leadership established a formal program for sharing appropriate training concepts with allied species. The Tomb Guard protocols represent one aspect of human military tradition, she explained during a presentation to the Galactic Military Council. Our military doctrine is built on the principle that individual excellence, when properly coordinated, creates collective strength that exceeds the sum of its parts. What you observed was one soldier demonstrating the standards we strive to achieve throughout our forces. The questions that followed her presentation revealed how fundamentally the demonstration had affected galactic perceptions of human capabilities. Captain Mitchell, inquired the representative from the hegemony of worlds. Are these conditioning techniques applied to all human military personnel? All human military personnel undergo discipline training, Mitchell replied. The Tomb Guard represents the highest expression of that training, but the underlying principles are taught throughout our forces. Reliability, duty, and the ability to maintain performance under stress are considered fundamental military virtues. Commander's ethic had become something of an expert on human military psychology following his detailed analysis of the demonstration. His reports to Altarian intelligence had led to significant revisions in their assessments of human military potential. The demonstration revealed that humans can be trained to overcome fundamental biological responses, he explained to his superiors. Fear, discomfort, emotional distress, and even family loyalty can be subordinated to mission requirements through their conditioning methods. This suggests military reliability far beyond our previous estimates. Lieutenant Volkov had perhaps undergone the greatest personal transformation as a result of the incident. His experience had led him to request assignment to Earth for cross-training with human military units, seeking to understand how such discipline could be developed and applied. I realize now that I was testing the wrong thing, he reflected during his final interview before departing for Earth. I thought I was challenging a junior soldier's understanding of military hierarchy. What I actually discovered was that humans have developed military standards that transcend traditional concepts of rank and authority. He paused in his comments to watch Corporal Chen complete another circuit of his patrol. When I attempted to assert my authority over Specialist Santos, I was trying to impose external control over someone who had achieved perfect internal control. The discipline I witnessed wasn't about following orders. It was about becoming the kind of person who makes orders unnecessary. The memorial area had returned to its normal quiet atmosphere, but the significance of what had occurred there continued to resonate throughout the galaxy. Military doctrine was being revised, training programs were being redesigned, and the standards for what was considered possible in military conditioning had been permanently elevated. Years later, the incident would be studied in military academies throughout known space, As an example of how cultural misunderstanding could lead to profound learning opportunities, the Russian Marine Protocol incident, as it came to be known in official records, became a case study in the importance of understanding the deeper principles behind military traditions. But in the memorial area itself, the simple routine continued unchanged. Guards maintained their vigil over the tomb of the unknown human, their discipline serving as a silent testament to the values they protected. 21 steps. About face. 21 seconds of perfect stillness. Continue. The masterclass in protocol had ended, but the lesson it taught would endure for generations across the stars. Humanity had shown the galaxy something new about the possibilities of military service, the meaning of dedication, and the heights that discipline could achieve when guided by unshakable conviction in the importance of duty. In the end, Lieutenant Volkov had gotten his answer about protocol. He had simply needed to understand that some protocols transcend the need for explanation, existing not because they are required by regulation, but because they represent the very best of what military service can achieve.